you know, Most Wanted '05 is not the best Need for Speed. Change my mind.
I copy 31.
Turning on the speeder that just flew by me.
Hello, and what is going on today, guys? Tomcat here, and welcome to a brand new video where we are going to be diving deep into the history of Need for Speed and why I believe that the best Need for Speed game of all time is not Most Wanted '05 and not Underground, which I'm sure is going to upset a lot of people. Now, to be fair, Most Wanted '05 and Underground, I really more along the lines of Underground 2, honestly, in my opinion, but Most Wanted '05 and Underground 2 are my number 2 and number 3 favorite Need for Speed games. Now, of course, the new ones are obviously, there's some that are really high up on the list. I actually really enjoyed Carbon. I really enjoyed Carbon a lot. I actually, contrary to the mixed reviews that the game got, I really enjoyed Payback as well. And which Payback is a little bit of a controversial game, but I even enjoyed the crap out of Need for Speed 2015. And I know that game you were either like over here or you were over here. And these two sides didn't really get along very well. And eventually, sometimes, you know, one of these guys would maybe, like, find a part of the game that they liked and eventually come over here or over there or wherever. But that game definitely had a lot of fans, and it had some people that really didn't like it as well. So the reason why I've decided to talk about this is because I still believe, to this day, that the best Need for Speed game ever made is Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. And honestly, the game that has come the closest to that game in the modern era, in my opinion, wasn't even, I mean, it was sort of the new Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, but that game, I mean, it was okay. Don't get me wrong, it was a really good game, but the game, in my opinion, that has been able to get close to the spirit of that game was Rivals. And I know there's a lot of people that really hate Rivals, but there's also a lot of people that really love Rivals. And I'm in the camp that loved Rivals, and I think it's a weird place to be in because a lot of people really didn't like that game. If you generally speaking, if you liked Underground, you liked Most Wanted, you didn't like Rivals. And I know I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm kind of speaking for what I've seen out there in the world and out there in the Need for Speed community, because the Need for Speed community is a weird thing, right? It's very split. You have the guys that want Underground 3 over here. You have the guys that want a remastered Most Wanted '05, and that's all they want. You have guys that want a remastered Underground 2, and that's all they want. And then you have the other guys that want games like they want the road racing and chasing style of games to come back, like High Stakes and Hot Pursuit. They want that style reborn. But to be fair, there's only a certain amount that you can actually do with that style of game, and I understand that, right? The emphasis on open world games obviously becoming more and more prevalent as time went on through the Need for Speed series. So they kind of had to decide that at a certain point they were all going to be they pretty much decided that they were all going to be open world. And of course, we don't know where the series is going to go or anything, but I honestly can't help but feel that the spirit that Hot Pursuit 2, followed closely by High Stakes, High Stakes is actually my number 4 favorite, going from Hot Pursuit 2 on top, then Most Wanted '05, then Underground 2, and then High Stakes. It's a very weird list, but I actually started playing Need for Speed back in the days of Hot Pursuit 1, which I believe was 1998, if I'm getting that correct. Now, diving back into the history of Hot Pursuit 2, and in my opinion, one of the things that made it so great was that if you stuck with that game, and if you really continued to play through it and drive yourself through that game, there were a lot of interesting secrets to be had. I mean, it was one of the first times in Need for Speed where Need for Speed Edition cars actually showed up, which is honestly, like, Need for Speed Edition cars, it's like, you know, take any game, any racing game that does special edition cars or unicorn cars or things like that always give you this little bit of extra something to work for. Now, the Need for Speed Edition cars, I think, were a really cool concept, and Need for Speed has actually implemented that same type of idea later on. Even up to like modern day, for example, they've got a similar type of system to where you can find really cool and unique cars. Now, there were a couple of weird things back in Hot Pursuit 2, like for example, there were no Need for Speed editions of certain BMWs due to, I believe, there was some sort of policy with BMW that didn't allow for certain types of modifications to be done in games at the time. And there was also a certain, for example, there was an exclusive Ferrari on the PS2 version, respectively, so you couldn't really have it on other versions of the game. But With all that aside, most of the cars in the game actually had corresponding Need for Speed editions, which definitely gave you, like I said, something to work for if you were wanting to spend more time kind of drilling away at that game. Now, I will say that that does imply a little bit of grinding, and there's also there's a certain amount of people that are not gonna want to go back and have to grind away into a game's story mode to get a slightly modified version of a car that they already have. It's more of a completionist style thing. And some people really like that stuff, and some people really don't like that stuff. And I feel like it's really hard for a series like Need for Speed that's changed so many times in so many different ways to appeal to a wide audience, because you've got the people over here that really like that completionist style, and you've got the people over here that want to just hop in their car, customize it, and just be gone, be out the door. And the perfect Need for Speed game is so hard to think about, because again, you got the people clamoring for the underground stuff, and you got the people clamoring for the hot pursuit stuff, and then you got the people, the most wanted people, that are hanging out a little bit like in the middle, and it's this weird mixture of all these different ideas that people are trying to come up with and figure out. So with that being said, I think that there's definitely a way that they could bring a lot of this stuff back and push it forward into a new game without leaving a ton of it, behind, without completely going away from their heritage. Because I personally feel like the true heritage of Need for Speed lies in the open road, fast cars, being chased by cops. I feel like that's where the heritage of Need for Speed lies, and I would really hate to see it go away. But I do also think that there's a big part of Need for Speed's heritage that lies with the whole Most Wanted and Underground era, with customization and lots of cop interaction and involvement and stuff like that. I feel like customization and cops are some of the two biggest pillars, if you want to call them, of Need for Speed as a whole. So when you think about it in that regard, you think about it from the standpoint of, let's not lose what was here in the past, but let's also not lose what was kind of in the middle of Need for Speed's lifespan. And I don't want to say lifespan as in like saying Need for Speed is going away. I'm more along the lines of just the middle of its lifespan up to now. Because up to now, I think there's a lot of different things that like for example, some of the things that I think the perfect Need for Speed game would need to have is a day and night cycle, a proper open world with... Now, see, that's the thing. An open world. Hot Pursuit 2 was not open world. And rather, it had tracks with a ton of different possible layouts within several different environment types. It had an environment type that was similar to Alaska. It had an environment type similar to Hawaii. It had an environment type similar to Greece. And these were all kind of, they were all very interchangeable because they had like seemingly a million different routes that you could choose from. And that actually added a lot of depth to anybody that wanted to, depth to the game, to anybody that wanted to go and, dive into like searching for shortcuts, searching for new routes. That was a very big deal in Hot Pursuit 2 because that could open up a whole new tactic for getting through these routes faster. And you could really connect with the routes, I feel like, and you could really learn them a little bit more than you can learn some of the routes in the newer games, because in an open world game, you're always focused on, you're like, yeah, I've driven this way before. I've got, a general idea of where I need to go. I know where the shortcuts are, no big deal. But when you have a predetermined track with a million different ways you can go, some ways are going to be faster and some ways are going to be slower. So when you think about it in that way, it's definitely a little bit more on the thinking side, to where yes, you're racing, but you're also having to think about these little different routes and game dynamics that you could choose to do, but they come with a certain degree of risk. And I feel like risk is another very important thing when you're talking about a game like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit and talking about what made it great. And it felt like, and see, that's the thing, Hot Pursuit 2 always felt to me like one of the old games, but made new for the time. And of course, I played it on PS2, so we're talking about an old game here. But when I say old Need for Speed, you got to think, I'm talking about Hot Pursuit 1, High Stakes, Porsche Unleashed. Now, Porsche Unleashed was a very different game and a very weird game and a weird time for Need for Speed, in my opinion. Very special game, no doubt, but at the same time, definitely a step away from what I think makes Need for Speed what it is, in my opinion. So the other thing that Hot Pursuit 2 really did well, in my opinion, was the Be the Cop mode. And to be honest, the Be the Cop mode, yeah, it was a little clunky, it was a little weird, it was a little sketchy, and it didn't always work. But I think sitting on the couch with a friend, you know, you two like next to each other, one person's the racer, one person's the cop, that right there, while split screen gameplay is a bit of a thing of the past now. I feel like that was one of the things that made the game so special, because like you have a friend over at your house, you know, who doesn't want to chase your buddy as a cop, and then you can trade and switch off. And I think, yes, that is a bit of an old concept, that is a bit of an old idea, but I think, you know, multiplayer gaming where you're on the couch next to somebody is kind of lost in this day and age. And while I'm not necessarily suggesting that it come back, I'm suggesting that maybe some resemblance of that type of an idea come back. And I think that we've gone away a lot from the whole Be the Cop idea, and I think it adds a really fun dynamic to gameplay, because you're always going back and forth, and it adds a lot of competition to it. And yeah, I get competitive racing is also a thing, but that idea of just, you know, maybe not like competing on the level of like professionals or anything like that, but like just social, like almost casual competition between you and a friend is one of the things that's always made Need for Speed so much fun, because it's not some hardcore simulator. It's not some hardcore game. It's more of just a sit down, have fun, you know, maybe race some cars and be a cop if you want, be a racer if you want. You have that tension, you have that, all of those dynamics that combine together to be a really, really fun experience. Now, what I'd like to finish up with here is saying that I know that the Need for Speed series has kind of been all over the place recently, and not necessarily all over the place, but I know that the fan base has been all over the place, right? I mean, if you go on the Need for Speed Reddit, and it's like a battlefield. It's a literal battlefield. But no, anyways, what I wanted to finish up this video by saying is basically I would love to see a lot of those aspects from the old days of Need for Speed carried forward into the new Need for Speed, while keeping things like customization and wide body kits and things like that really make the modern Need for Speeds enjoyable, but also bringing the classic aspects of what makes Need for Speed so great into the modern age. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please do leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you enjoyed the video by leaving a like, and also subscribe for more if you so desire. So, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Talk to you all later.